1, 2, 3, 4.
Chant down Babylon kingdom, team make me chant down Vatican now. Bang bling bling, chant down Babylon kingdom, team make me chant down Vatican now. Chant down Babylon kingdom, team make me chant down Vatican now. Bang bling bling, chant down Babylon kingdom, team make me chant down Vatican now.
What up, y'all? It's Babylon 5 Podcast. It's your boy, Jermaine Event. How is everyone doing? Thank you guys so much. I just want to say thank you guys to everyone who listens to the podcast. You don't have to, but you take time out of your day to spend about an hour with me every week, and I really appreciate that. I wanted to mention that as I was saying, I found out that that this podcast wasn't on as many of the major streaming sites that I thought it was. So I made some efforts into putting it on those, I'm still having trouble submitting it to Apple, but I've submitted it everywhere else. It's been added to a lot of other places. And there was an uptick in listeners. So thank you, everybody who's listening to the podcast. I appreciate you guys so much. But this is episode 147, ladies and gentlemen. I'm calling this bad boy Samurai, as I should, and as I hope that everyone, even if you're listening, if you're not, I hope your week has been amazing. And I hope this upcoming week will be even better. I mean that sincerely, wholeheartedly, ladies and gentlemen. But as I said, this is episode 147, and I'm calling that bad boy Samurai. Because, we're going to talk about UFC 275, which was headlined by Glover Teixeira defending his belt against the Samurai, Jiri Prochazka, and a slew of other fights. We had Valentina taking on the very game. She's defending her belt versus the very game, Taila Santos. We're going to talk about that fight. We're going to talk about Zhang Weili versus Joanna Jerdjeczek too. We definitely got to talk about that. And then we're going to touch on a few more fights on that card. The headliner, the main event for UFC 278, August 20th in Utah, apparently, has been announced. We're going to talk about that. And we are going to talk about next week, UFC Austin, which low-key has some really good fights on there. It's headlined by Calvin Kattar versus Josh Emmett. And I was looking at the card just before I recorded, and I was like, is that Kevin Holland? Like low-key superhero in his spare time, just happens to be there to stop car thieves and fucking bank robbers and shit. He just so happens to be there, like to stop the shooter when there was like a mass shooting or some shit going on. Like Kevin Holland, like over the course of 12 months, stopped fucking 3 actual crimes. So I'm like, dude, Kevin Holland's fighting this week? I didn't hear anything about Kevin Holland fighting. I felt like he had a bigger buzz a year or two ago. You definitely would have heard about Kevin Holland fighting. I didn't hear anything about Kevin Holland fighting, but I'm definitely excited about that. You also got Donald Cerrone versus Joe Lozon. That fight got switched to this card. There's a lot of good fights on here. We're going to talk about that card. Yes, we are going to talk about that card. And if you guys would like to follow this podcast on Instagram and Twitter, it's at Babylon5Pod. You can follow my or you can email this podcast. We don't do that anymore. You can email this podcast at Babylon5Podcast@gmail.com. You guys can, hit that like button anywhere you guys are listening to this podcast. As I'm saying, I appreciate you guys so much for the listeners. As I said, I just got this uploaded to or added to a few more of the major streaming sites I didn't know that I wasn't on. Like, we've been doing this shit for 2 years, my nigga. And I could have sworn I was on all of them. And I guess I wasn't, but I still can't figure out. Like, when I went on there to try to submit everything to Apple, I was like, oh, yeah. This shit is randomly difficult for no reason. Every other site is like, just go here, nigga, submit your RSS feed, and nigga will tell you in like 2 days if you're here. They'll be like, just fucking have like an episode uploaded. It usually just applies to like new podcasts. I've been doing this for over 2 years, as I'm saying, almost 3 years now. Like, I qualify for all this shit. This is a well-established podcast. Got thousands of followers on Instagram, ladies and gentlemen. So like, I surpass all the requirements. I'm overqualified, if you ask me, but I don't know why Apple is a little more difficult than most other sites. Like, when I tried to log in, it was like my password was wrong. So I was like, I forgot my password. Then it was like the email address that I use isn't attached. Like, it's not there. They're like, it's not found in our server. So then I was going to set up a new fucking Apple account. And I think they had like an alternate email you could put in there, like, to be reached. And I put the Gmail that they fucking said wasn't in their system. And they were like, this is already in use. Nigga, how? How is it already in use when you just fucking told me that fucking thing, that Gmail wasn't in your system? I couldn't log in. And now you're saying like, oh, that shit's in use already, bro. You can't just use that as a backup. Somebody's using that. Nigga, I'm using it. I'm trying to log in and you won't let me. So I remember thinking like, yo, they always was extra. And that's why I just like kind of gave up on them. And I guess I kind of forgot about it for like almost 3 years. Kind of forgot about it, but we're on a lot of few like new streaming services that I should have been on a long time ago. So thank you guys so much for listening to it. As I said, if you guys are on Instagram, we did move to the cooler side of town, but we're right above a bar, and it sounds like people take their break right outside, right outside this window here. You guys should follow this podcast as well. As we talk about fights, I was about to record earlier. Well, right before I started recording. Now it was like really loud, and I was like, "Oh shit, I can't record." So I was about to put UFC 4 on, and then it got quiet, and I was like, "Oh shit, the break must be over. Let me fucking just jump into it." But here we are, 8 minutes in, and they are back, ladies and gentlemen. They are back. I'm going to keep giving you guys the social medias. If you guys would like to follow this podcast on Twitch, it'd be follow me at twitch.tv/Babylon5. You guys can comp some merchandise. Go to teespring.com/store/BOFpod-shop. Low-key, I'm fucking crazy. I went on Teesprings because I kept saying here, yo, I got to update the merch. I remember thinking I did like a real half-ass job of all the merch. And then when I went on there, I was like, no, this is everything that I was thinking that I should make. It's already there. Yeah, it's already there. I don't know why it doesn't pop up when I go to the store. I gotta like dig for the shit. I gotta rearrange what the highlights are. Yeah, I gotta rearrange what the highlights are, I guess. But yeah, just go to teespring.com, cop some merchandise, man. Go to teespring.com/store/BOFpod-shop. And lastly, don't just be my Negroes, be my patrons. Head on over to patreon.com/Babylon5pod to be my patrons and my Niji. You know what I'm saying? Did I say Negroes back then? I don't know. I was like, damn, did I say it? I think I said it. I think I done said it. This UFC 275 was like one of the first Saturdays that I haven't closed in a long time. So I was like, fuck, I get off early enough where I can watch every fucking fight like I love it, like I like to do. So I was pretty excited on that. And UFC 275 did not disappoint. There was great fights from the very first fight on out. Jocelyn Edwards opened up the card against Ramona Pascual out of Hong Kong. However the fuck that works. I was honestly, I don't know. But Jocelyn Edwards versus Ramona Pascual started the card, and that was a pretty good fight. But in the main event, ladies and gentlemen, you had Glover Teixeira defending his belt versus Jiri Prochazka. Ladies and gentlemen, I just rewatched that fight for the second time. I was at the gym earlier. I rewatched it. I was like, I'm going to be on this elliptical for 45 minutes. It's perfect, you know. That's more than enough time to rewatch this fight. And there was points in this fight. This fight was one of the best fights I've ever seen. All right? One of the best title fights I've ever seen, 100%. If not the best title fight that I've personally ever seen. A lot of people can say, well, what about when Shogun fought this nigga? It's like, well, I'm talking about what I've personally seen. All right? I think this is the best that I've personally seen. I don't know about when fucking Royce Gracie fought that nigga over there. That's not what I know. All right? I'm John Jones, Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor. I mean GSP, but I came in toward the end of GSP. That's when the good pastor put me on to the UFC. Shout out to Mike Henry. That put me. I'm not even like bullshitting. I said the good pastor. I'm sure I've mentioned it here, but I started watching UFC when, like, I've never been religious, but my boy Elliot would go to church youth groups on Tuesday after school, and I fucked with Elliot. So he invited me, and I was like, yeah, I'll go. And niggas ended up being, like, real cool. Before you know, niggas is kicking it at the youth pastor's house. I'm kicking it with the whole family. But it's all of us. It's, like, just kicking it. We used to always just, hella motherfuckers used to just, that was the kicking it spot. And he would have motherfuckers come over to watch UFC on Saturdays. But it was, like, back in the day. So UFC didn't come on. It wasn't on every Saturday back in the day. So it wasn't like we niggas was kicking it every Saturday watching UFC. But when shit would happen, he was really into it. Might be now. We lost contact. I was always interested about this Mike. Still follow UFC. But as I'm saying, that's around the time I remember he showed me GSP coming into the ring and doing the whole, I am not impressed by your performance. That's like one of the first things I've ever seen in the UFC fucking world was that fight with Matt Hughes, and then GSP coming in and saying, I am not impressed by your performance. And then he was explaining to me, like, he's foreign, and, like, he didn't mean to say that. Like, he had to explain the whole thing to me. Like, that's my introduction to MMA, UFC. That's where it started. So what I'm saying is, this is probably the best title fight that I've personally ever seen. Pretty phenomenal. Jiri and Glover went to war in this fucking round. I think in every round except the third round, Glover mounted. He got full mount, all right, on Jiri and fucking rained down some nasty ground and pound. Like, it looked like almost fight-ending ground and pound in every round except the third. In the third round, Jiri Prochazka was lighting that nigga up, hitting the body, uppercuts. He was landing pretty much at will in the third round. Right? He drops him one time. And then instead of chasing Glover to the ground like he had done in previous rounds, he just told Glover to get up and he walked away. And Glover got up. Glover then proceeded to be getting pieced up again by Jiri. Jiri's piecing this man up, drops Glover again. Jiri walks away to let him stand up. Mark Goddard says, stand up. Yeah, dude, go back. If you guys don't remember, go back and watch this moment here. The second time that Jiri drops Glover in the third round, Mark Goddard tells him to get up. He doesn't. He stays down on a knee. And then Goddard turns to him and was like, you have to stand up. And then he just found the strength to fucking keep fighting. But he initially was quitting right there. He was getting his ass kicked in that third round. Jiri was all over him. He was stuffing them takedowns. And then he was fucking just lighting this boy up in the stand-up. Jiri looked phenomenal, all right? He almost, and there was times where, so that happened there in the third, where I was like, yo, Glover didn't want to get up there. He didn't want to keep going at that point, but he chose to keep going. The second time Goddard was like, you have to stand up, and then he stood up. Then later in that round, he get drops for a third time, and Jiri follows him and just delivers nasty ground and pound. What looked like should have been fight-ending ground and pound, but Goddard just let it go. Goddard was a just bleed-ass nigga in this fight. And through 5 rounds of back and forth, in the 5th round, Jiri's tired now. Glover couldn't land any punches on him in the first 4 rounds, really. He couldn't really land anything clean, anything heavy, because Jiri was just too fast, too elusive. But in the 5th round, when he slowed down, Glover's landing. He's landing this right, these heavy right hooks. He's hurting Jiri. And he gets Jiri hurt, backed up against the fucking fence, and he goes for a fucking guillotine. All right? Goes for the guillotine, and the commentary team's just like, no, that's the worst move. It's like every time that happens, the jiu-jitsu guy you go for that guillotine, and if you don't submit your opponent once you go for that guillotine, all that's going to happen is you're going to end up on your back with this person on top of you. All right? So, unless you are fucking 1,000% sure that you're going to submit this person, do not go for that guillotine. Don't do it. But he did, and as they're falling to the ground, Jiri pops out, and he ends up on bottom. And he tries to sweep. He's trying to stand up, get into a better position, and he turned and gave up his back to Jiri. And Jiri locks in what I think some people called a bulldog choke. I'm not sure if it was a bulldog choke, but he locked in his choke and submits Glover Teixeira in the 5th round. There was 30 seconds left in the fight. And a fight that people are already calling. I was already looking damn, this is insane. In the 5th round, they're like, yeah, this is one of the greatest fights I've ever seen. You know what I'm saying? And with 30 seconds left in the 5th, Jiri finishes Glover Teixeira to become a new UFC light heavyweight champion in just his 3rd fight in the UFC. He said he didn't want to come to the UFC too soon because he didn't want to show up and just participate. He wanted to show up and take over. he's shown up and taken over. He's finished every opponent, and he is now UFC champion. He's now a millionaire, right? Because that's how this shit works. And like, once you're the champion, you get pay-per-view points. So he's most likely now a millionaire once he gets the pay-per-view cut of it all. It's life-changing shit. So this fight was phenomenal, all right? Shout out to Geisha. Shout out to Geisha MMA. Shout out. She hit me up like right after. I was sitting here in the studio like watching the fight just to like, you know, and I was just like, fuck, that was an insane, this is like one of the best fights I've ever seen. You know, and I was like, I need somebody to hit me up, and right away Geisha like hit me up like that at that moment, like, dude. I was like, yo, it was insane. Yeah, shout out to the Untitled Rule, or the Unified Rules of podcast. Was chatting with them on Twitter throughout the night. Love the MMA community, you know. I love the MMA community, the little us podcasters, the MMA podcasters. Love the community. This is one of the best fights I've ever seen. There was like, what was it, a head and arm choke that Glover got on Jiri in the second round. It was real deep, and it was like it looked like he was about to, I was like, y'all, this is over. There's no way he's getting out of it. And then he put up a thumbs up. And then, like, I don't know, he, like, moved his body in a way that he, like, jolted it forward in such a way that it popped his head just out of the choke. I was like, yo, there's no way he's getting out of this. Glover had it on perfect by how it looked, but Jiri was able to withstand the strongest choke, you could feel it. Like, if you've ever trained jiu-jitsu, you can feel, like, definitely when somebody's holding on super tight, and you can feel when they start to loosen up a little bit on that choke. So as soon as Glover started to loosen up on the choke a bit, Jiri popped out of there and was in a dominant position. I thought if it went to the ground, it was going to be over for Jiri, you know, coming into this. That was my thought, that it would be over for Jiri if it went to the ground. But he went to the ground multiple times, was mounted in all, like, Glover made it to the full mount in every round except the third. I think except the third. I don't remember it happening in the third, but it may have happened. It happened in every other round. Glover made it to full mount and was raining down ground and pound. Got a nasty cut above Jiri Prochazka's eye. He was getting into some real, like, it was a back and forth war, ladies and gentlemen. This is a fantastic fight. Cheers to both of these guys, man. Cheers to both of these guys. So, congrats to Jiri, the new light heavyweight champion. Most likely he's going to fight Jan Blachowicz next. They got into a little altercation, if you will. Like, as Jiri was leaving, Jan was in the audience, and he was like, I want to fight. And Jiri just, like, blew him a kiss and was like, I love you. Like, it's weird to me, like, what was it, Hector Lombard? They brought that guy in there to talk shit to Hector Lombard after he just had a fight. And then Hector Lombard had never calmed down. He didn't get out of fight mode. He just started swinging. Started rocking this dude. And I never understood why they bring in another fighter after this person's fight. Like, all right, you just fought this guy for 25 minutes and you won, so now let's bring this next guy over here to get in your face immediately after you just fought that guy. Like, I've never understood that. And Jan tried to get in Yuri's face, the champion. He tried to get in Yuri's face, and he was just like, I love you, blew him a kiss. But that's probably the fight that we're going to see next. Glover Teixeira says he is not retiring. He's going to keep fighting. There was a lot of moments in there where I felt like he could have won that fight. I'm telling you, he got that full mount in every round except the third, I believe. Every round except the third. He probably got it in the third, too, and I'm just not remembering correctly. But I know he got full mount and landed some nasty ground pound in every round except the third. I know that for a fact. So Glover's not done, and I would love to see a rematch between these two in the future. So congratulations to Jiri Prochazka, the new UFC light heavyweight champion. One day, Jiri has fought open weight. He's fought a heavyweight. I would love to see Jiri Prochazka versus Ciryl Gane. As I've said here before, that's the fight that I want to be made, but I'm just a boy, all right? I'm just a wooden boy. I don't make these decisions. But that's a fight that I would love to see. Also tonight, you have Valentina Shevchenko defending her belt versus Taila Santos. When I'm watching that fight live, ladies and gentlemen, I'm like, holy fuck. Here we are in the 5th round, and Valentina Shevchenko needs a finish. It seemed like there's that picture hating ass niggas like to post, and real Conor fans like me hate. But it's like the picture of when Khabib takes Conor down in the 4th, and he just looks like he's drowning. Head up, and he's drowning. Like, that's what was happening to Valentina via Taila Santos, the person I was saying, I don't think she really has a chance here. I didn't really like her striking, and I think in the stand-up, Valentina was clearly better. But in the grappling, though, Taila was much better than Valentina. I thought she was dominating her. She was attempting submissions, controlling her. Valentina looked pretty uncomfortable, but she ended up getting the split decision victory. There was a lot of controversy. One judge scored it 49-46 for Shevchenko. But as I'm saying to you right now, going into the 5th round, I was like, fuck. Valentina needs a finish. And somehow that one judge scored all rounds except one round for Valentina. I was seeing videos, the whole crowd was booing. I saw a video with Henry Cejudo. He was like 49-46. That's a robbery. Like, that isn't, like, it's just not fair. Like, nobody got a 49-46. Nobody won 4 out of 5 rounds in that fight. It was just pretty interesting. But Valentina retains her belt against Taila Santos. I don't know, have we seen the chinks in the armor? Because in multiple fights here, we've seen when she fought... why is her... Is it Jennifer Maia? When she fought Jennifer Maia, the grappling gave her some trouble. Maia had a lot of success with the grappling, but Valentina was able to withstand the storm, come back and win that fight. In this fight with Taila, we saw that the grappling was a huge issue for her. So it's like, what happens when, like, she's in there with the Erin Blanchfield, when she's in there with the Tatiana Suarez, when she's in there with a Mackenzie Dern? if she's able to take her down to the ground. Like, what happens when she's in there with some more really good grapplers? It looks like if we found any chinks in the armor currently, it'd be somewhere in the grappling. But I still think there's still sharks in those waters. Like, you know, tread them waters, you know, tread lightly. Do whatever the fuck you want, but I'm telling you, there's sharks in those fucking waters. If you choose to test it, to see if you can make it to that other side unscathed, by all means. That's Valentina Shevchenko, the GOAT, but she looked to struggle quite a bit in this fight. And then there was the incidental headbutts that happened that kind of changed the whole... There was a headbutt where Taila got pretty much hit pretty nasty. It swelled up her eye, swelled her eye pretty much shut. And she was like pretty much blind on the left side after this headbutt that the ref just like did nothing about. But before that headbutt, Taila was pretty much dominating this fight in the eyes of most people. And then somehow Valentina ends up winning the fight on the judges' scorecard. So I would love to see a rematch. Like, if not immediately, I don't know if they would do it immediately, but like, I think the division is so thin. You know, the shit is so thin. Like, I joked with my wife the other day. I was like, if she started training, she could probably be a top 15 UFC fighter in like a year. Because it's that thin. You know what I'm saying? Like, in any pick a weight class, nigga. Nah, if you 145 or 115, no, 125, 145, 125. I think those are the marquee weight classes where, like, it's thin. That's why I was like, when I looked at Taila Santos' record and the people that she's fought on the way leading up to this fight with Valentina, I was like, it's real thin in here, ain't it? Ain't a lot of people to choose from. All right. But what I overlooked, you know, it's like Jillian Robertson has really good jits. And, you know, I shouldn't have discredited the people that she beat on the way, that Taila Santos beat on the way, because her stock definitely goes up after this fight. I'm not sure who she fights next. I mean, I would like to see her fight Valentina again, because I don't think there's any real clear people for her to fight as champion next to her, to defend next. She's talking about fighting Juliana Pena or Amanda Nunes. That's what Valentina is talking about, but I don't know after that fight if that's what we're going to see. You got Zhang Weili versus Joanna Jerdjeczek 2. If you guys saw on Instagram, I went with Joanna to win the fight. And then Joanna ends up getting manhandled in the first round. And then the second round knocked out cold. And then Joanna retires from MMA entirely. I couldn't have been more wrong about that outcome, because it ended up being her last hurrah. So, shout out to Zhang. Shout out to Fight Ready. Shout out to Henry Cejudo, that whole squad. Zhang has really stepped up her grappling. She's so strong. She's a beast out there. They said beforehand that whoever won that fight is going to fight Carla Esparza. She probably came out there relatively uninjured. So we could get that fight probably pretty soon. Pretty sure Carla is pretty relatively uninjured from her fight with Rose. I'm pretty sure we could get that fight pretty soon here. And yeah, I'd be real hyped for that. So shout out to Zhang for stepping it up. And shout out to Joanna Champion on the phenomenal career. I used to show the video of Joanna beating Carla Esparza to become the champion to people when I'd be like, yo, she's so insane. Like, she's just the best. I thought she was untouchable back in those days. And then Rose came and just knocked her out. I was like, no. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I used to be a huge fan of Joanna Jerdjeczek. I definitely drank the Kool-Aid on the Boogie Woman. And I'm not saying I shouldn't have. I should have. Because she's a great fighter. She had a great career. So, happy trails to Joanna Jerdjeczek. Thank you for the great fights. She had the best women's fight in UFC history against Zhang the first time. But she's had classics throughout there. So shout out to Joanna Jerdjeczek, and good luck on becoming a businesswoman and a mom. As she said, she is. Those are the next few steps for her. So happy trails to Joanna. Couple more fights, man. Choi versus Kuibao was a fucking war. It was a pretty good fight. Jack Della Magdalena, that dude is a beast. He passed the Dagestani wrestler test. Definitely going to be looking out for that guy. I didn't know who he was really, honestly, but when I was watching people like Israel Adesanya, all these people talk about the fight, talk about the card like their predictions, they kept like, everybody was like, yo, this Jack Della guy. And I was like, all right, let's see what's going on with Jack Della. And then I was like, oh, he's fighting the dude who trains with Khabib, this Dagestani wrestler guy. I was like, nah, it's not going to go too well for him. And no, he passed that test. He got caught in some shit and popped out of that pretty good. Got up and then finished Ameev with these just hooks to the body. That's how I play UFC 4. I be like, I mean, I attack everywhere, but mainly the body. The body is fucking... I mean, I finish fights pretty quickly to the body, but I like to play with dudes because, like, when you attack that body, it fucks with their cardio so much. They fucking lose. They can barely come at me they can throw one punch and be winded if I attack that body properly. So he's properly attacking that body. I love it. I love to see it. Love to see it. So shout out to Jack Della. That dude's a beast. I was tweeting real hype. I was like, oh, it's Fiallo time. Time for Fiallo to get that fucking ass beat. Jake Matthews. In the first round was kind of a war. Second round, Jake Matthews just fucking walks Fiallo down throwing. It looks like if he's throwing these right overhands and like Fiallo just couldn't get out of the way of it. Then he starts attacking the body, backing him up, and just knocks Fiallo out. Just put it on Fiallo. So shout out to Jake Matthews, man. It was great fights throughout this whole card. If you guys skipped any fights for UFC 275, you guys are fools because it was great, all right? It was a great card all around. UFC 278, the headline has been announced. It will be Kamaru Usman defending his belt versus Leon Edwards. Finally, the rematch. Leon Edwards has one loss on his record to Kamaru Usman. And this is his time for redemption. He has not lost, as I said, to anyone since that fight. What is his record? Like 19-1 or some shit like that? He's only lost to one person. Who is Kamaru Usman? And the Nigerian Nightmare. So we're finally going to get that fight August 20th in Utah. So I'm going to watch that from the crib. Yeah. But I'm hyped for that fight. I definitely am going to stick with Usman. I see no reason to go against Usman. I think it'd be crazy to kind of go against Usman after what we've seen this man do lately. He's just getting so much better. And he's improved to a point where it's like everybody's trying to catch up, and you have your strengths, and he's going to come in there and shut you down at what you think is your strength. Like, he's really good. He's really good, so that's an interesting fight. I'm curious how that card's gonna fill out, but I'm real hyped for that. So I'm definitely sticking with Kamaru Usman to beat Leon Edwards, man. We got some interesting things happening in the welterweight division. You got Hamza was talking about fighting Nate Diaz in August and then fighting Bilal Muhammad in October. I'd love to see the first fight. The second fight kind of makes me nervous because I would love to just see Hamza walk straight to go from Nate Diaz to a title fight and not fight Bilal Muhammad, because he very well could lose to Bilal Muhammad. I think he walks through Nate, and that keeps the hype train alive. But I think, he could definitely beat Bilal, but I feel like it's not going to look that good. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be a real gritty fight if he is able to beat Bilal. Bilal's really good. Bilal can win that fight, I believe. So, in order for me to keep the hype train alive, I would like for Hamzat to not fight Bilal Muhammad. I think he can. If he fights Nate, they would not make him fight. And I'm going to be like, all right, nah, you beat Nate Diaz. Now you got to fight a way less popular person. And this fight isn't going to have as much hype before you get a championship. No, if he beats Nate, then they're going to be like, you're fighting for the belt next. So don't fight Bilal. Just because there's no reason to. For Bilal, it's great. If you're Bilal, fight Hamzat if he's crazy enough to sign it. Because I think Bilal can win that fight. But that's... For personal reasons, I just don't want it to happen now. Let Hamza win the belt first, potentially. And then y'all can fight. I just want to bust that mental nut. You know? You know what I'm saying? Let me just fucking see Hamza come through and walk through Kamaru Usman. That'd be cool. It'd be fucking crazy to see. Holy shit. He said he was going to do it and kill everybody. Kill everybody. He did it. He came. It'd be interesting to see. So, yeah. I'm hyped. Next week, we got UFC Austin. All right? They're going to Austin. Ladies and gentlemen, it is headlined by Calvin Kattar versus Josh Emmett. I don't really like... I said this about Taila, and I learned how wrong I was, but I'm saying about Josh Emmett, I don't really like the level of opponents he's fought on the way here. He beat a Michael Johnson as a Michael Johnson was on a slide. He beat Shane Burgos, Shane Burgos gets hit a lot. Basically, he has no head movement. He just keeps coming forward, taking that damage, That's the Shane Burgos way. He had one of the craziest, watching him get knocked out, where he got hit, and then he kept coming forward, and then his body just, fell apart. He just fell back and melted. It was one of the craziest knockouts I've ever seen. As I'm saying, this is the route. These are the people that I've seen that Emmett has fought on the way to this Kattar fight. And I think Kattar's going to be... I don't know, man. I think Kattar's a better striker, but Emmett's going to have that pressure on him. All right? He's going to put that pressure on him. Emmett is 37 years old. That gives me cause for pause, my nigga. And I just don't know, man. When I'm looking at it, everything tells me that I should be going with the taller, he's longer. I should be going Calvin Kattar to win this fight, but the pressure here might be a little much. I think the pressure which, we saw Max Holloway put on Calvin Kattar sort of melted him there, but he's maybe learned to, I don't know if he's learned to deal with that. Let's say Giga never slips in that fight. Who knows what the fuck that fight looks like? It wasn't like Giga was getting pieced up before that, but then he slipped. Kattar jumped on him and fucking just beat his ass. And that changed the whole fight. So let's say Giga doesn't slip on the canvas that everybody keeps complaining, like, yo, this shit's slippery. Everybody keeps falling. Then that happens. We're like, yo, why don't they do something about the slippery ass fucking canvas? Everybody keeps saying it's slippery. This wasn't a one-off thing. But, yeah. As I'm saying, did Calvin learn to deal with that pressure? Or did he get lucky in that fight? I don't know. Well, I guess we're going to find out here against Josh Emmett, because Josh is going to come with that fucking pressure. But I'm going to roll with Calvin Kattar here to beat Josh Emmett. That's what I'm rolling with. Prove me wrong, Josh Emmett. I would love to see it. As I was saying, man, on this card, man, it's under the radar. You got Kevin Holland versus Tim Means. I haven't heard anybody talk about this fight. This should be a fucking... this should be, the people's main event or some shit. Somebody should be talking about this fight. You still on this card have Donald Cerrone versus Joe Lozon. That got moved to this card. Dude, let's fucking just go through this card. All right, so the Cerrone-Lozon fight is the co-main. Before that is Tim Means, Kevin Holland. Before that, you got Joaquin Buckley versus Albert Duraev. Not sure who that guy is. But then you got Damir Ismagulov taking on Goran Kutaladze. That's going to be a fucking good fight. Then you got Julian Marquez taking on Gregory Rodriguez, ladies and gentlemen. That's going to be a good fight. At least on paper. All of these fights are great fights on paper. I say on paper, I'm not hating on these fighters. I'm saying Carlos Spiders versus Rose 2 sounds like a good fight on paper, you thought. There was way more action in the first fight. You thought the second fight was going to be good on paper, but... Oh, shit, Adrian Yanez versus Tony Kelly. That's going to be a good fight. Damn, this is a good card next week. This is low-key a pretty good card. Damn, it starts at 3 p.m., so I'm not going to be able to watch the whole thing, unfortunately. I can watch, the main card. You got fucking Eddie Windland versus Cody Stamann. The first fight of this card is Roman Deladze. I think I'm pronouncing that wrong. Versus Kyle Dawkins. Dude, that's a fucking interesting fight there. All right? That's how the card starts. That's an interesting fight. If you guys are not excited for UFC Austin, you guys are crazy, because this is a good card. And then after that, I cannot wait for my boy Arman Sarukian, ladies and gentlemen, versus Mateusz Gamrot. That is June 25th. We get my boy Arman Sarukian in the main event. I'm real hyped for that. But jumping the gun on that, we will talk more about that next week. But if you guys would like to follow this podcast on Instagram and Twitter, it's at Babylon5Pod. You guys can email this podcast at Babylon5podcast@gmail.com. You guys can hit that like button anywhere you're listening to this podcast. I appreciate it so much. If you guys are on Twitch, go ahead and follow this podcast at twitch.tv/Babylon5. If you guys would like to cop some merchandise, head on over to teespring.com/stores/BOFpod-shop. And lastly, don't just be my Niji, be my patrons. Head on over to patreon.com/Babylon5Pod. Thank you guys so much for being here with me on episode 147. And I will see you guys here next week for 148. And I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves and each other. And I'll see you when I see you. I'll holla.
Chant down Babylon kingdom. Team make we chant down Vatican now. Bang bling bling chant down Babylon kingdom. Team make we chant down Vatican now. Chant down Babylon kingdom. Team make we chant down Vatican now. Bang bling bling chant down Babylon kingdom. Team make we chant down Vatican now.